I enjoy mountain biking when I have the time. And that's what I try to do when there's no surf. I'll pass it on to Liz.
Oh, no. Let's see here. When I'm not surfing, my name is Liz Schotman. I'm the Washington Regional Manager, one of 2 staff. And right now, I sit on my couch. I don't know. I got nothing. I used to free dive, and I hope to get back into free diving because that was like my go-to water sport. And so my goal for 2021 is to buy a thicker wetsuit and get back in the water. Here's hoping.
I know some good places if you want.
Do you? Yes, I need to get it dialed in because I'm kind of scared of this water because it's cold, dark, full of different things that I'm used to.
Run out of breath faster.
Yeah, for sure. I will pass it to Corey.
Everyone, yeah, my name is Corey. I'm excited just to tune in and listen tonight and learn and be a part of everything. But when I'm not surfing, I like to go for a good road bike. So cycling is good stuff, especially being able to hit the Olympic Discovery Trail to Port Townsend or out to the lake. So lucky to have that around here. And then I'll pass it on to Nils.
Hi, I'm the treasurer, and when I'm not surfing, my favorite things to do is to ski.
There's no skiing here.
Oh, really? Darn it, that's what the realtor said. All right.
Who are you passing it on?
Oh, yeah. Pass it on to Greg.
When I'm not surfing, I like to hike. I like going for hikes, and this is a great place to do it. I'm going to pass this off to Gus.
Not me.
She doesn't go.
Harsh. All right. I'm Gus. I'm the Washington Policy Manager, the second of 2 staff here, and I work with all of our chapters around the state on statewide policy issues and campaigns. My favorite activity to do when I'm not surfing would probably be surfing in the mountains on my split board in the backcountry. And I'll pass it back to Carmen.
Thank you, Gus. Yeah, my name is Carmen Geyer and the communications coordinator for our chapter. And when I'm not surfing, I love to trail run. I like to be out and about and hitting the trails. We live in such a beautiful place for it. So, and it's nice to kind of escape the wind too in the summertime out in our beautiful forest. So I will pass it to Joseph.
Hey everyone, I'm Joseph. I guess if I'm not in the water surfing, then I'm probably driving around looking for surf. Let me see. I don't know. Is it Pat? Is that your name?
Yes, that's me. Yeah, sorry, they put it on there. You can't tell, but I like doing everything you guys mentioned. I might be the only one here that's really landlocked. I live in Idaho and surf on the Olympic Peninsula for blocks of time when I can get over there, usually with my daughter. But I like doing all the things mentioned just about. I'm not a split boarder, but backcountry ski, mountain bike, hike, and lately I've been playing guitar a lot more. So that's kind of been my go-to thing. I'd have to say I have an exercise routine to kind of make up for the time I don't spend outside and play guitar.
I think you win the award for longest traveled from chiming in, Pat. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I've seen you online a handful of times commenting on the posts and things like that. So it's great to connect with a face.
Well, thanks. I actually, a few years ago, stumbled into Port Angeles when there was a meeting in town and actually was able to walk in on the meeting with my daughter. It was really fun. And I support the chapter and support, Surfrider Foundation and have for years. you know, I grew up in Hawaii, and I before Surfrider Foundation was a thing, Save Our Surf came around, you know, with some of the real kind of the founders of the surf conservation movement, I thought. And when I was in high school, it was the first time I got involved with anything like that. And I'm still committed and glad you guys are out there operating, doing what needs to be done.
Right on. Thanks for the support.
All right.
We got a couple others who,
Nicole.
if you wanted to call on people, or there's a couple others there.
Yeah, looks like we got Nicole. Can you hear us, Nicole?
Hey guys, I'm Nicole. I'm actually not a surfer, so I like to do lots of other things besides surfing, particularly snorkeling, especially over submerged intertidal zones when I can. And fishing would be my other big activity right now. And I can't see who else is on, so please pick another person if there still is. And I'm the secretary.
Leslie? I see you, Leslie, at the bottom of my screen.
So I think Leslie came in after we started. So the question is, what do you like to do if you're not surfing on the beach, or not at the beach, just anywhere? I don't know if Leslie is here. All right.
No, Leslie.
Hi. Hi, this is Leslie. Sorry about that. We just pulled in. We're just kind of popping in. My husband Lewis is here with me, and we're our video connection is pretty poor, so as well as our audio. Probably we have pretty slow DSL. We just in the outdoors, and
All right.
we're big surfers, but our kids are all see what's going on with the group.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining, Leslie. We have been having EC meetings, kind of trying to brief.
And my video's frozen.
Can you guys hear us?
Here, I'll start.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay. I don't know if I'm talking over the top of somebody. I apologize. We've been kind of having EC meetings to brief everybody on what's updated, and so we can keep these meetings fairly shorter than they have been in the past. It's really hard with everybody doing the Zoom, because one person at a time is hard to kind of take everybody's opinion and make it short. So we're just trying to make these meetings a little briefer. We do look for outside input, so we're just trying to get together and give each other our input before we get to these meetings. I'll start off with Beach Lake. As far as the outline goes, there hasn't been any new updates yet, so we're going to keep going on. I'm just going by the outline we had on Monday. Liz, if you're on with me, if you have the same outline. Recap of Gmail training. Liz, Nils, Carmen attended. We kind of went over that. I don't know if that really applies to tonight's meeting. The Rotary Club presentation, do we want to do that first? Is there somebody that's doing that? Oh, that's
in March.
That's
so
next March, I see. Sorry. My bad.
we committed to it, but we don't have to think about it yet.
Okay, thank you.
Down the road.
I'm having the Seabed mining letter, share with local businesses if you can. Is there anybody that has any info on that?
What we're talking about tonight. Don't steal my punchline.
Sorry. I'm just gonna sit here and wait for the next one.
No, I'll take over if you want me to. The only other things that I think are worth mentioning is we are working on some beach etiquette sign ideas. So hopefully we'll have some more updates on that in the future once we have a little bit more of a deeper strategic planning session to try to bring some education to our beach community, beach user community, for those who don't know the rules or don't know like surfing etiquette and things like that. And then what else? EC positions. If anybody is interested in joining the chapter as an executive committee member and sort of level up your involvement, we're always looking for passionate and dedicated volunteers to participate in sort of our background behind the scenes planning and strategizing. So if that interests you, shoot us an email.
I did talk to Lacey today, or message her, and she said she's looking at letting her position go because she's got some other things going on in life that aren't allowing her to be here at the meetings as much as she wants. So that's available if there's any takers. I don't know how we promote that, or if there's any interest on board here.
If anybody wants to be a volunteer coordinator, holler back. We'll probably post some things on social media and they'll send them out in the next newsletter as far as like what it takes to join the EC and what it involves and the commitments and things. So
yeah,
keep everybody in the loop on that. And the rest of it, I think we're fine. I think that covers most of it. Membership drive. It is the end of the year membership drive. So if you have not renewed or are not a current member, please go to your OPC chapter website and click the give button on the top right. And that will route you to the membership sign up page. For the low price of $25 a year, you can support all the important work that your local chapter is up to.
And can't we win prizes if we get like the most people signed up to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can also give gift memberships with a click of a button on that same website. And so you can sign your friends and family up with or without their consent. It's great. And yeah, it's whatever chapters get the most new members at our end of the year membership drive get cash prizes. So allows our chapters to sort of level up and do even more amazing work. So tell your friends, tell your fam, spread the good word. I think that's it.
Okay.
Unless, I don't know if Gus had any policy updates or not. Or if you want to wait till the end of the presentation and you can sort of talk about the seabed mining policy stuff.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I figured. Right on. All right.
All right, so is that presentation about the Twin Harbors Waterkeeper?
No, oh yeah, so fun fact, Lee was out. Lee First is usually my co-presenter with, and she works with, for Lee, Twin Harbor Waterkeeper, and she has been out doing other amazing work all day and has not made it back in time to get to a computer. So you're gonna have to listen to me talk this whole time, unfortunately. So I apologize in advance for you having to listen to this whole time and not get to hear her talk, because she's great. But yeah, I can jump into it unless anybody has any questions or things they want to throw out there first. And if not, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get to it. I will try to monitor the chat, but I'm also fine if people want to just unmute themselves and shout out questions as is. So, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right. Sharing my screen. Are you guys seeing the presentation or like the weird notes? Just the slide? Cool.
Screen.
It's always a gamble which screen is gonna go. All right, so again, my name is Liz Schotman and I'm the Washington Regional Manager here at Surfrider Foundation. And I'm going to be shedding some light on seabed mining. I'm going to kind of talk about what it is, how it might affect our coasts, and sort of what we're doing about it. I did want to start today with a land acknowledgement to respect and affirm the sovereignty of the coastal Salish tribal nations on whose traditional lands we reside. including the Lower Elwha and Jamestown Sklallam tribes in the coastal area that you guys are probably at, but I here in Olympia am presenting from the Nisqually and Squaxin Island people's land, traditional lands. And I want to kick it off with a quote from Sylvia Earle, because you should start every day with a quote from Sylvia Earle, who is a renowned oceanographer and just general all-around badass woman, scientist, and explorer. And so she said that what are we sacrificing when we look at the deep with dollar signs on the few tangible materials that we know are there? We haven't begun to truly explore the ocean before we have started aiming to exploit it. And I really like this quote because it really emphasizes the need to take a precautionary approach to things like seabed mining, because history is like fraught with hard lessons learned about destroying that which we don't fully understand, and the deep sea definitely qualifies as that which we do not fully understand. We've only explored like 0.01% of what's down there, and so that's why we and other partners are really pushing for a very precautionary approach when it comes to this potentially very devastating extractive industry. So what is it? So the short definition is extracting minerals and metals from the sea floor. And so I'm going to be focusing on the industrial extraction of like hard minerals and metals, but there's other types of seafloor mining. Most commonly, it's called sand, gravel, and shell mining, which has been around for decades and has its own set of issues. And that's basically like sucking up sand for things like beach renourishment, which I'm not going to talk about, but it has its own set of issues. I'm talking about industrial scale mining of hard minerals and metals that are typically found in the deep sea, which is like 200 meters or deeper. So when you start doing research on seabed mining, you hear a lot about what are called the big three. And so there's 3 different types of resources that contain these minerals and metals, and they're located in different parts of the ocean, and they're extracted in sort of slightly different ways. And so the manganese nodules are at these like big, flat, empty, what are called abyssal plains, sort of out in the middle of nowhere. And then you have the crusts that are on these seamounts, which are basically underwater mountains. And then you have what are called seafloor massive sulfides, which are around hydrothermal vents. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one of these. So the manganese nodules are pretty cool. They're like these like potato-sized lumps that are just kind of sitting around out in the middle of the ocean. And they're full of things like copper and nickel, and very importantly, cobalt and lithium, which are really important for things like batteries. And so to extract these, you basically just like kind of just pluck them up off the sea floor, which is not super, you know, as far as extractive industries goes, pretty benign. They're like these little remote operated vehicles that kind of just vacuum them up. And, you know, it doesn't seem very devastating, but you're actually, when you remove these, you're removing the only hard substrate that these species have to attach to. And so you see these like colonies at the bottom here. You have like a little sponge, and this is like a jellyfish, and they attach to these nodules, and then you can see this whole community that then grows off of, you know, that initial creature or whatever that's attached to the nodule. And so when you remove these, you're removing the only habitat, and you're basically removing, you know, none of these species can survive without something to hold on to. It's just like soft sediment, so they won't be there anymore. And once you remove them, they're gone forever. These things grow so incredibly slowly. I think it's like a millimeter every 1,000 to million years. And so once they're gone, they're gone. And then the next one we have is what are called ferromanganese crusts, or cobalt-rich crusts. And so these are, again, on the top of seamounts or underwater mountains. So if you're snorkeling above these, they look just like kind of like rocks. But if you cut them, you can see this cross-section has this thick crust of mineral-rich rock and deposits that are full of copper and nickel, a lot of cobalt and manganese and other rare earth minerals that are, again, really important for things like batteries and other technologies. And to extract these, you kind of have to plow up the crust, which is, you know, essentially like mountaintop removal underwater. And it's particularly alarming because seamounts are incredibly important biodiversity hotspots. They're like oases in the desert that is the open ocean. And so you have all these cold, oxygen-dense, nutrient-rich waters flowing around on the bottom of the ocean, and they hit the walls of the seamount and kind of come up to the surface, what's called upwelling. and the upwelling fuels a lot of primary productivity. And so you end up with like these, like lots of biodiversity and really important for commercial fisheries. And so mountaintop removal of these would be pretty devastating to those ecosystems we anticipate. We don't know, this hasn't happened anywhere yet. It's just sort of theoretical at this point, but we can look to other extractive industries like fishing to sort of guess how bad it would be. And even just deep sea trawls that drag nets across the tops of these and just sort of knock things over have pretty significant effects, like with severe decreases in biodiversity that last for decades. And so we know that just dragging a net causes enough damage. And so plowing these up is going to be probably pretty devastating. And then finally, we have seafloor massive sulfides. So these are super cool. They're like hard chimneys that grow around hydrothermal vents. And they're really unique communities because they're chemosynthetic. And so most of the life on Earth that we know of gets its energy from the sun. So the base of our food chain are all photosynthetic plants. But these things, they don't need the sun at all. They can live off of the minerals and the heat that just comes out of the Earth's crust. And so super unique communities. We don't really know a ton about them yet. And some scientists actually think that this is where life on Earth began. And these are full, unfortunately, they're also full of gold and silver and copper and other metals. And the way you harvest them is you sort of knock them over and smash them up and bring them up to the surface, which obviously would be pretty devastating to those communities, which can be really cool. This picture here is just like, there's just a lot of weird stuff that grows down there. There's like these giant tube worms and like fuzzy lobsters and like weird creatures that we're just learning about. So again, another community at risk. So aside from the immediate effects of extracting these resources, the physical damage and immediate mortality of the creatures that just can't get away from the machines, there's a bunch of other effects that are a lot harder to predict, but are probably gonna be bad. So if you think about the deep sea, it is cold, it is quiet, it is dark, and it operates at a very slow time scale. And so when you start bringing heavy equipment in with all of its noise and its lights, you're going to interfere with how those species interact with each other and how they survive. And so you're going to have noise pollution, which can obviously interfere with animals that communicate with sound, like especially marine mammals. Like we see that with our orcas and just boats driving around, and sound travels 4 times faster in water than it does in air. And so the sound effects might travel pretty good distance. Over 70% of the creatures that live in the water column use bioluminescence in some way. And so they use light to communicate, whether that's attracting a mate or defending from a predator or luring in food. And so having a bunch of bright lights on this equipment would also have unknown consequences, but would probably interfere with how these critters go about their day. And then you also have thermal pollution. The waters at the deep sea are very cold, and when you pull those waters up and process them at the warm surface and then eject that unwanted water into the water column, you're going to be jacking up the temperature in that water column with, again, unknown but probably unfortunate consequences to those critters. You're going to have conflicts with industries like fisheries and recreational industries and things like that, but far and away probably the most concerning effect is going to be with the sediment plumes. So there's 2 different plumes. There's one that's at the extraction site called the collector plume. So you have your heavy equipment, even if it's just picking up nodules, it's stirring up a bunch of sediment. And that sediment's gonna travel some distance before settling down and basically burying whatever communities are there that aren't used to being buried. And so they're probably not gonna be they're not gonna be that resilient to it, most likely. But then you also have the dewatering plume. So you suck everything up, you process it aboard a ship, and then you have what are essentially mine tailings being ejected back somewhere in the water column, whether that's at the surface or even back much deeper, like closer to the extraction site. And this plume, we know a lot less about. Most of the modeling that I've read about is trying to figure out where the extraction plume at the extraction site, how far it will go. And those estimate between 10 and 100 kilometers. So that's still pretty far with just the collector plume that's like kind of concentrated at the seafloor. The dewatering plume will likely travel much further. Some of it will settle, but some of it will also dissolve and get transported on currents, which is kind of concerning because we know that some metals do bioaccumulate up the food chain. So, if you ever hear like, don't eat too much tuna or pregnant women shouldn't eat mackerel, a lot of it is because of mercury can bioaccumulate up the food chain. And the majority of like primary productivity in the base of the marine food web are filter feeders. And so, you know, it's likely that having like potentially toxic mine tailings released out into these plumes into the water column will find their way into, you know, every component of the food web and probably end up on our plates, most likely. And then just to drive home the long-term effects of these, again, so studying the deep sea is like super expensive and really technologically like challenging. So there aren't a lot of empirical studies that we can point to and say like this is what's going to happen. But one of the most famous ones that we have is called the Discal experiment. And so this was in the South Pacific in 1989. They kind of drug a plow through some sediment. They didn't even extract anything. They're just like, we're just going to plow some plow marks through the soft sediment here in the abyssal plain, and then periodically check back and see what happened. And these top images, A and B here, I believe are the earlier plow tracks. So they're pretty crisp, pretty fresh. And then however many years later, they've gone back and like looked at them and they're still pretty visible. And then 30 years later, those plow tracks are still there. And we haven't seen a lot of recolonization. So a lot of species are not moving back into these plowed sites. And so like we predicted, things just don't happen very quickly down there. And so this bottom right image is a control site. So they studied it, but they didn't plow it. And it's hard to see, but there's like crabs and sponges and little critters and stuff running around versus the plowed area doesn't have much going on. And so the other thing that I kind of wanted to draw attention to is the fact that in addition to the fact that we don't know all the effects, they will probably be very long lasting. And the other concerning part is that a lot of this it's all going to be out of sight, out of mind. And so our ability to sort of enforce whatever is happening down there, once we do have rules, is going to be pretty limited. And so, you know, you guys have all heard of the Deepwater Horizon spill, right? But there's another spill that is still going on in the Gulf of Mexico called the MC-20 Saratoga, which is the oil rig that got sank in like 2004 during a hurricane. And it's just been slowly leaking oil and is set to overtake the Deepwater Horizon as far as like amount of oil. So it's just this long-term natural disaster that's just leaking into the Gulf. But it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's really hard to get to, and it'll take like $1 billion to fix it. And so, you know, it's just sort of a cautionary tale of like, we can't really enforce easily what's going down there. We can't verify that, you know, whatever companies are doing what they should be doing. And so that's just another sort of, hey, we really need to proceed with caution with this. And we don't really know how to restore these ecosystems. So if we do mess it up, at least with terrestrial ecosystems, we're like, hey, we kind of have an idea how this works, so we can try to fix it. With these deep sea ecosystems, that's kind of out of the question right now. All right, so why are we talking about this now? So we've known these resources have been down there for like decades, but it just hasn't been financially feasible to go extract them on an industrial scale. But recently, we've obviously started to deplete our terrestrial sources. We keep mining everything out of the land. But we've also experienced a significant uptick in demand. And a lot of that has been fueled by the green technology revolution. And so all of our cellular devices, our LEDs, wind turbines, solar panels, electric car batteries, all of those products require you know, batteries and resources like these rare minerals and metals. And also on top of that, we have increasing technology with drones and things like that. So it's a lot more technologically feasible to get down there and bring these resources back up at scale. So where are they and who's in charge? A lot of what I've been talking about is in international waters. And so, which is beyond 200 miles out to sea is where the exclusive economic zone is, this light blue area. That's our 200 miles out to sea for every country. And then you have international waters that are regulated by the International Seabed Authority is the one in charge of these marine resources. And they're kind of nested under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which apparently the US never ratified. And it's just like a global community where everybody sits at the table and figures out how do we manage these resources that aren't in anybody's jurisdiction, but you know, we have to work together to make it fair and equitable and all that. And so apparently we never ratified it, but if, fun fact, the newly introduced Ocean-Based Climate Solutions Act lists this as one of the priorities, is ratifying the law of the sea for the US. So that would be some progress and kind of give us a seat at that table, which I think would be important. But in this map, you can see the Discal experiment over here. Solwara 1 is actually the only industrial permit mining operation that's going on in the world that I'm aware of. And it's definitely hit some hiccups and is also experiencing some local opposition by indigenous communities in Papua New Guinea who are like, we don't really want this industry in our waters. And then you can see within, so a lot of these resources are in international waters, but a lot of them are in our exclusive economic zone. So you can see a lot of these sulfur massive the sulfide chimney communities are these orange dots, and then we have the cobalt-rich crusts on the seamounts, and you can see that these are in all along the Pacific coast. More locally, we have this map that Pew Charitable Trusts provided us, and the pink area in this map here is all seabed, or excuse me, state waters, so our territorial sea, which is extreme low tide out to 3 miles. And so you can see these green dots are all known resources of hard mineral deposits of some kind. And luckily for us, a lot of them are located in the National Marine Sanctuary, so they're already protected. Don't got to worry about that. Excellent. But there still are some resources that we know about that are in our state waters but don't have any sort of protection. And here in Washington, we don't really have any regulations about seabed mining. Aquatic lands are managed and leased by the Department of Natural Resources. And so they're basically like, we can look at it if somebody submits a permit, you know, on a case-by-case basis, but there aren't any like protocols or like specific regulations about this industry. So we're working with Pew Charitable Trust and some other partners to try to ban seabed mining in these state waters, so this pink area here, because those are going to be the most vulnerable to those impacts. I also want to point this map here. I said that there's the big 3, but there are also other resources that you can extract from the seafloor. One of them being what are called black sands. And so they're kind of volcanic sands that contain small amounts of like, I don't know, titanium and gold and other like chromite and things like that, and platinum. And so this is from a report in the 60s where they're like, hey, there's black sands here that might have some of these minerals in them that we could extract. Nobody's gone after them yet, but it is in Grays Harbor. And so again, if we were to ban this kind of extraction in our state waters, it would sort of protect, and it would include protecting, you know, extraction of black sands, most likely, I believe. And so, which, you know, could jeopardize our shellfish industry or have unknown consequences to the ecosystems in these more shallow nearshore areas. All right, solutions. So what can we do? Obviously supporting local organizations that work on ocean protection. So I'm going to shamelessly also plug become a member for Surfrider again. It's a great way to do that. And also leveling up, not just becoming a member, but if you want to also volunteer. We're always looking for passionate people to volunteer, and that's a great way to promote this kind of work. Obviously, we can all do our part in our daily lives to reduce, reuse, recycle. The cool thing about metal is that it is actually infinitely recyclable. Unlike plastics, which degrade every time you recycle them, you only get 1 or 2 shots and then they're sort of worthless. Metals can be recycled infinitely, but we have to make sure we design our systems of collection so that we can recover those items at the end of their life and extract those materials from them. So I'm a big proponent of redesigning a lot of our products to fit into a circular economy. Right now we have kind of a linear economy where we extract resources, we use a product, we throw it away, done. But if we were able to create products that were easily reused and incorporated into new products and bring that economy full circle, that is a great way to sort of reduce the need for most of these resources. So ways you can do that are, you know, supporting organizations like Zero Waste Washington. They work on a lot of like electronics recycling and things like that. Go to fix-it fairs and other things to fix your appliances. And so wait to get the newest iPhone for a couple years until yours breaks, that kind of stuff. So we can all do a small part to help try to lower the demand. That gives us more time to kind of come up with how to deal with this problem more effectively. And finally, we are working on a business petition for local businesses to sign our letter to say that they also oppose seabed mining in Washington state waters. And hopefully we hope to bring this list of businesses to our legislators to be like, yo, make this a thing. Oregon banned this practice in like the 90s. So we're hoping to jump on that train. California is also sort of in the same boat we are as far as trying to come up with some regulations around this extractive industry. And then somebody, this is a new slide, so I might stumble on this one, but I know somebody sent in a question ahead of time before this presentation that sort of spoke to like, do we need these resources? Because these resources are fueling a decarbonizing future, like they're fueling the green technology revolution. And so that's sort of like this, well, what is the lesser of two evils? You know, we need to decarbonize, but how do we do it in a responsible way that doesn't jeopardize other ecosystems, you know, as much or not, you know, it's not worse than like climate change itself kind of thing. So I don't pretend to have the answer to that. I've read sort of different viewpoints as far as the amount of resources that are out there. Some argue that we don't have a choice. We have to mine the oceans. The oceans contain so many more resources than land, just because the oceans, you know, the world is mostly ocean. And also the resources that are found in the ocean are sometimes much more concentrated. So a good example I found was a material called, I think, selenium. I might be mispronouncing that, but it's used in solar panels, and the deep sea deposits of it are 50,000 times more concentrated than the ores that we have on land. And so some argue that, you know, because it's more efficient, deep sea mining is like the lesser of two evils. So that is an opinion that some people have out there. But there are others who are like, we have the technology to recycle what we have extracted, and there are enough resources left on land that we don't need to look to the sea. So I don't pretend to have the answer. I haven't had enough time to like really dive into it and come up with an opinion of my own, but I did want to sort of point out that there are different sides to the argument of whether this is a necessary industry to fuel a decarbonization going forward. And I always like to end on a positive note. So this is a manganese nodule, and it is neat. So I wanted to show that picture. And I wanted to end on this quote that I really like. It's by a deep sea ecologist that's a friend of mine. And he says that unlike any other extractive industry in pretty much human history, this is really the first industry where science and environmentalism have had a 50-year head start. And to me, this is like one of the most motivating and inspiring parts of working on this particular campaign, because we spend so much of our time cleaning up the mess we've made. And this is an opportunity to like stop a problem before it starts. And so to me, that's like, I'm super stoked to work on that for a change, instead of like, oh, this is a horrible problem that we're going to be dealing with forever. So yeah, so I wanted to end on that positive note and give a big shout out and thanks to our partners at Pew Charitable Trusts, because I pirated a lot of imagery and resources from them. Right on. All right. That's my spiel. Who's got questions?
So Greg had a question that he typed in earlier. He was saying, would there be chemicals in the dewatering plume?
Yes. I don't pretend to know like what they are or how they would compare to like the chemicals in like terrestrial mines. Like I don't know what the chemical process is of extracting those resources. But I would imagine that it's going to be similar. Like you're using whatever you need to extract those resources, and you're getting rid of the rest, which is mine tailings. And I don't know a lot about mine tailings, but none of it's good. Like, so yeah, I would anticipate it being problematic chemicals, but I don't know what they would be. I haven't gotten into that yet.
And I would just add, I know that, you know, these dewatering plumes can really travel a long ways. And, you know, definitely a number of chemicals that we would be concerned about, potentially some radioactive, you know, it would have a lot of impacts potentially on the food web, and, you know, especially if it was happening in the near shore on filter feeders and shellfish aquaculture potentially.
Yeah. And I will say, I backed up because this is where the slide that I had the note of this that I forgot to mention that a recent study where they just went back to the disc goal experiment, they were looking at the microbial food web And so microbes in the ocean are like huge drivers of global carbon dynamics. Microbes are like the master mediators of a lot of carbon dynamics in the open ocean. And you would expect, like microbes, they grow quickly. So you would think that they would recover quickly versus like, slow growing snails or whatever. But they looked and saw that they had found like significant reduction in carbon cycling and a so-called like reduction in the microbial loop is how they referred to it by like a third. And that's 30 years later from just plowing tracks through the sand. And so to me, that's one of the most alarming potential effects that we don't really have a good grip on is impacting the microbial communities that regulate carbon dynamics on a global scale. So that to me is, yeah, particularly alarming. Good question.
I got a question about so you were showing that the slide that was like the map of the globe, and I think you were saying there was like only this one here. There's one zone I think you were saying that they are currently mining in. Do you have an idea or just like a ballpark percentage of some of these minerals we're talking about that are being used to make batteries? How much comes from ocean sources and how much is coming from other sources?
Yeah, so right now, none of them are coming from the deep ocean. Last I checked, the Solwara project, I don't know what they've extracted, if anything, but I know that they've run into financial hiccups, it sounds like, and some local opposition. So I'm not aware of how much, if any, they've actually extracted. It's just they're the first ones that got the permit to go down there and start extracting. So right now, none of the resources we're using come from the deep sea because this industry hasn't gotten off the ground yet. But it is in the works, and the ISA, the International Seabed Authority that regulates the international waters, they're actively like upgrading and updating their regulations for how we manage it internationally. And I think they're going to publish new regulations next July, like in 2021. So they know this is on the horizon and that we need to sort of figure our stuff out before it really gets going. But I do know that like the vast majority, like this Clarion-Clipperton zone here is called the CCZ, and it's in a lot of the research because I believe it's the nodules. It's like this huge vast plain with just tons of these manganese nodules. And I think, I forget the numbers specifically, but it was like the amount of manganese and cobalt in those nodules is like maybe an order of magnitude more than like what's combined on land or something crazy like that. Like, don't quote me on that, but there's so many more of these resources underwater than there are on land. And so that's, one of the arguments of like, well, there's a lot down there, might as well get it. So, yeah. Any other questions?
It looked like there was one question in the chat there, if you can see it.
Oh, there it is. There's the chat. What companies do this type of thing? Is it always far offshore? Are the shorelines within the straits vulnerable to mining that would also affect nearshore habitats? Excellent questions. So as far as I know, it's mining companies that are the ones doing it. I don't know how many are like established terrestrial mining companies versus just new ones. I know that they have to, the few that I've read about are like, we got loans to start this project, these processes, and like, they have to do a lot of exploration before they can even start mining. And so like, there's definitely financial hurdles before they can even turn a profit theoretically. So I don't know a lot about them. There's like Nautilus is one that you hear about a lot, but they're mining companies, and I guess they have the resources to explore and potentially extract and like design the equipment and things, but I don't know a lot about the industry and the businesses themselves. As far as if the straits are vulnerable, they would be vulnerable as far as like if there were resources to extract and we extracted them, I would say that yes, they would be vulnerable because again, we don't know how far some of these like plumes and these effects can travel, but likely they would be able to travel enough to where anything that occurred in the straits would probably be felt in some way by the marine communities and then our communities that depend on them. So whether that's noise pollution for our orcas, like they would definitely probably be affected by that. I can't say definitely, I don't know that, but I would assume so. But yeah, are there resources in the straits? I don't know. If you look at the map, there aren't green dots, and I honestly can't say if that's because we looked and didn't find anything, or we just haven't looked yet. I've done some digging to try to find more information, specific information on what is in our waters, and it's not easy to come by. Again, partly because it's just really expensive and hard to survey what's down there. And so I don't know if it's a lack of me not being able to find that information, or if it's just not out there. Like this Black Sands report is from the 60s, you know, so I don't, like what I have found is really old. This alarm keeps going off. I don't know why. Apologize.
Well, and maybe Liz, that might be a good opportunity and segue for me to chime in a little bit. You referred to some of our efforts to, kind of close this loophole in Washington State waters, and some of the efforts that we're looking at on that. And we have kind of identified, some of the language in the existing RCWs and how we might potentially amend that to make it stronger, to basically shut the door on seabed mining for hard minerals and precious metals and black sands and those things. And it would cover all of those pink areas. So all of the state's territorial sea, which is from the beach out to 3 nautical miles, as well as the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the entire Salish Sea, recognizing that we might not know what's there right now, but we feel like we know enough to know that we should take a precautionary approach and prohibit this activity before we have multinational corporations knocking at our door, proposing to extract precious minerals from our very vulnerable, and productive state waters. So this effort, we're looking at potentially trying to get some legislation drafted right now, working with your state senator, Senator Kevin VandeWeghe, on this issue. And so he's been very receptive. We've been, having conversations with his office, hoping to have some draft legislation back in the near future. It's kind of hard to say with the landscape in the legislature starting up in January. Obviously, a lot of concerns around COVID and the Washington state economy and social justice issues like that. So we're kind of taking approach that it might take a couple of years to get this across the finish line, but we also feel like this is kind of a housekeeping thing that potentially, if the window provided itself an opportunity to move quicker on this, that perhaps that would be something to go ahead and just get done.
Get her done.
As far as your work with the legislation, is there any specific pushback that you've already encountered, or any hurdles that you're anticipating? As you're working to get it through, I know stuff just takes time to happen and go through all the channels and stuff. But as far as are there industries or groups that have like kind of a counter argument or any reason to oppose your legislation, what you're proposing?
We haven't encountered that yet. However, it's still kind of in the early conversation phase of this, and so it might be something that pops up when we get a public hearing. But the fact that there are no existing proposals on the table right now, I think, is a beneficial thing. The initial conversations that we've had with other ocean users, the commercial fishing industry, shellfish aquaculture, have all been really positive, and lots of folks share concern about this. And so I think there could be a really good opportunity to get some really unlikely support from a wide spectrum of different ocean users, and as well as hopefully both sides of the political aisle.
Good question.
I had a quick question. I think you mentioned that Oregon had passed some sort of legislation banning mining in their state territorial waters. What about British Columbia? Do they have any similar kind of rule or law?
That's a really good question. I'm not currently aware of anything that they have. I have read some articles about concern, especially in some of the seamounts that are found off of British Columbia, and certainly, given the proximity to you all there in the strait, that could be of potential concern. It's definitely something. They have some marine conservation areas up there, marine protected areas, and it's something that is definitely on the radar screen. And I can try and dig up some of the articles that I've read in that, but to my knowledge, I don't think that they have regulations on that currently.
And then as far as approaching businesses, like, are you guys looking for like businesses in particular? I mean, is there, or just like any business? Because out here we don't really have like large corporations or anything like that, but I can think of a couple small businesses that would be interested in signing up.
Yeah, definitely. Any businesses that rely on healthy oceans or robust coastal communities are the most at risk and vulnerable to these kind of, if this got going in our waters. So especially those coastal communities that are concerned, we definitely want their voices heard and their names on the list if they're willing. Because, but any business, because we have a statewide economy and a lot of it is driven by coastal resources, but it still affects what happens, further inland because, resources are distributed. And so, any business that has this concern, we welcome their addition to the list.
So if you rely on, a healthy ocean to inspire you for some really amazing artwork, for example, and those associated recreational activities, that would be a great thing to add. It's really similar to, our offshore oil opposition letter. So we had a lot of businesses, outdoor recreation, gear shops and seafood restaurants and shellfish aquaculture, things like that, kind of that diverse spectrum of interest that maybe their business doesn't exactly rely on, say, an ocean industry, but maybe they cater to those who do, and just recognizing the interconnectedness of all of this in our coastal communities is a really key thing. And so, we're not discriminating by any means. The more the merrier. And to the extent that you could share that, especially with contacts that you have, friends and neighbors and family, that would be all of the more helpful in that effort.
Favorite restaurants?
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know if you picked up on that, Todd, but that was directed at you. I know you stepped away. And you're muted.
Well played. Well played.
I heard that. I might need you to refresh my memory later on.
The link is posted right here in the chat if you have that up on your Zoom right now. It's really easy. It only takes like maybe a minute total. So have a look and feel free to share that. You can also go to our website, which is washington.surfrider.org, and there's a link to a really great blog post that Liz did a little while back that has a ton of information that's really helpful in understanding this issue. If you want to dive a little bit deeper. No pun.
Unintended. See what you did there. See what you did there.
Thank you. I'm unmuted now. Sorry. So is there anything else, any other questions for that? Or are we moving on to the next You got virtual hill day. Any thoughts on that? As that goes to Liz and Gus updates. But that's pretty much what you just did, right? You've updated us on everything that you have going on.
I mean, there's a few other things around plastic pollution reduction that we're working on for state legislation. You know, I know we're getting a little bit long in the tooth, and that's probably another presentation in and of itself. But, you know, some of the efforts that we've had in the past to pass a statewide styrofoam ban is included in that. This concept of extended producer responsibility and putting the burden back on those who are manufacturing these single-use plastic items and requiring that they actually kind of create that circular economy and pay for the recovery of those materials and efforts to try and keep them off of our shorelines is something that we're working on. So I could go way down in the rabbit hole on that, but I'm not going to tonight. Another, you know, issue, I'll just mention it briefly. I got a call from Senator Van de Weg's office the other day, and they're working on this effort. You know, there's been a lot of concern about drownings that have occurred from non-motorized vessels and paddlers, you know, throughout the state. And so they're looking at efforts potentially to require some boater education certification type program. And there was definitely some concerns about potential unintended consequences that might also encompass surfing. And so how might we go about better defining that, you know, who might be covered in that, recognizing that, you know, most people who are going into the ocean to surf are usually pretty avid swimmers, and that isn't where, you know, these drownings and deaths and injuries are occurring typically. And so just today I provided some feedback, somewhat what other states have done, and some length-based requirements, as well as how to define non-motorized boating, and that it would be activities that were using an oar or a paddle, typically are the ones of concern. So hopefully that at least helps steer things in the right direction. And you know, all of you don't have to go out and take some boater safety course just to go surfing, which it wasn't really the intent of that. So we'll see where that goes. I'll try and keep you all posted if that moves forward. But just a little snippet. Yeah.
It relates to the beach etiquette signs. If we customize for the location, maybe like I know at Salt Creek, there's when the waves are quite big, there's some beginners that get in right in the salt at the creek outlet and got swept out past the island and ended up on the rocks below camping. And had to be rescued. So maybe think about some customized beach signs with some local dangers.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the extent that, you know, we as a, you know, aquatic recreational community can be promoting best practices and safety and education in this realm, I think all the better, you know, for everyone. So yeah, definitely, you know, something that I think, you know, we could continue to do more of, and it would be helpful for everybody.
We've been working on some beach etiquette signs. I think we're kind of waiting on different places to put them and find out if they're acceptable, or if those properties are willing to accept signage and hopefully participate in that as well. So we are, as the chapter, we've been kind of working on that as well.
Awesome.
And then the virtual hill day is something where right now we're recruiting volunteers who want to represent their chapter and the oceans for a virtual Ocean Hill Day. So normally we send chapter leaders to DC to lobby on behalf of the oceans every February. And obviously this year we're not traveling, it's going to be virtual, which, you know, has its pros and cons, but the pro is we don't have to burn any fossil fuels or fly across country. It's a lot cheaper. And so we're hoping to get every chapter in Surfrider represented. So we will provide some training and some guidance, but right now we're looking for volunteers who want to engage. It will take, I think, 2 days in March. So you'd have to sort of be available for 2 days in March. Obviously you wouldn't be like speaking for 2 days straight, but, you know, to kind of lurk on some of those sessions and when necessary, sort of speak up and sort of give your pitch for the oceans and why we need to lobby for them. So if you or anybody you know who is interested in that, it's sort of some high level activism. So you get magic gold stars and the oceans will thank you. But it does go a long way, like interacting with people, like letters mean a lot, petitions do stuff, action alerts help, but human to human contact and engagement is really where a lot of the change happens. That's how you like change someone's mind, you know, like who's had their mind changed by like an email? Probably none of us, but a conversation with another human being can be very powerful. And so providing that opportunity for us to speak to our federal legislators is pretty valuable. So if you're into it, don't be scared. I'm scared. I wouldn't do it. No, I'm just kidding. But no, we'll help you and guide you in the process. So.
Yeah, I could just say, you know, it's something that we've done for the last few years. And as folks might recall, Joe has gone back to Washington, D.C. a couple of times, you know, and represented you all as a chapter, as well as Kara also. And so it's really been a great leadership development opportunity for both Joe and Kara, and really, you know, kind of bringing home some of the issues that you all have that experiential knowledge of on your stretch of coastline and making them real and kind of conveying some of those stories to legislators and congressmen and women, you know, who get wrapped up in dollars and budgets and, you know, things like that and wonk speak. This is kind of an opportunity to kind of make it real and shine a light on things. So if any of you are interested, chat with myself, chat with Liz. The hope is that each chapter will kind of nominate someone to be the representative. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the dates are March 8th through the 11th. Loosely, I think there's, you know, maybe a keynote one night, and it's probably not all of the 2 days because, you know, we won't have like meetings all day every day. It's like a couple of 15-minute chunks here and there, kind of thing. So just to, you know, maybe a little bit more realistic expectation of what that ask is. So.
And so the deadline for nominations, we're asking them by January 20th. So you have some time to think about it or recruit your friends. And yeah, I think the Hill Days are the 10th and the 11th is when I think that your part would be played. So, yeah. Neat. Well, that's all I got. Anybody have any fun ocean facts they've learned recently? About the shallow seas, because I've been reading nothing but deep sea stuff. So I'd love to learn about the shallow sea. Fun fact. Got him.
Well, I know that there's a pretty juicy swell that's arriving tonight, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll probably be kind of pumping tomorrow, at least on the outer coast. I don't know.
He's lying, Niels. Don't listen to him.
Can I mute him?
Niels can't surf right now, so we're trying to not enable him.
Let's stop talking about surfing. Come on.
All right. Well, I wasn't talking about surfing. I was just talking about the ocean conditions.
Near shore, yeah.
I can't really surf right now either, so I was just hoping to inspire someone, and that I might be able to live vicariously of some of the photos that you might share or something like that. But I did also want to make a plug. If you haven't looked at our website recently, Liz did a really cool post on king tides, which the first round happened last month. The next round's coming up mid-month, if I'm not mistaken. There's really some amazing footage that was captured with a drone in Westport, and it was pretty mind-blowing. Just the level of flooding that was happening there in the community, and kind of, you know, the king tide, which is the highest high tides of the year, coinciding with about a 20-25 foot swell, made for some pretty spicy conditions out there. It's definitely worth a look if you get a chance, so check it out.
Says Port Townsend, the December 16th, 17th, and 18th, and La Push is the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Doesn't have PA on there though. So.
Well, it's the same time period, but the thing is, you get both. You get the outer coast tides and you get the Salish Sea tides. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, the dividing line's right about the Elwha. I could be wrong on that, but based on previous experiences.
It's going to be in the morning.
It's a great opportunity to get out there and maybe take some photos of some of your favorite stretches of coastline. There's some information on the website about, you know, how you can share some of those photos and use them with the helpful. If anybody has a drone, we're definitely hoping to, you know, have folks share some of that footage. And it's just a really great opportunity to raise awareness about what future sea level rise might look like along our stretch of coastline, and how that's going to impact our communities.
Yeah, Gus, the video in Westport's pretty mind blowing. It's pretty heavy for sure.
Yeah. When it was shared with me, I was like, wow, that was a lot bigger than I was thinking it was going to be.
Sea was angry that day, my friends. Good stuff.
Captain.
I gotta get going. I gotta dip out, but I appreciate everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and spending another evening on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, it's been a busy month, and December looks pretty busy too. So hope to see everybody on the 1st of January.
Catch you on the flip side. Have a great holiday for those of you who we don't see.
Yeah.
And 2020 will soon be behind us. So hoorah. Cheers to that.
It's almost over.
2020 hindsight.
No. So many good memes.
All right. Well,
take care, y'all.
Everybody.
See ya.
Bye.